Welcome to the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast, where business owners, thought leaders, and community champions from across Central Illinois come to share their story. The Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. Anything less would be uncivilized.
What's up, Central Illinois? I'm Derek Hayden. I'm here with Garrett Ulmer. We are your hosts for the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast, powered by Zambu. Zambu is a delicious grapefruit or wildberry vodka-based spirit infused with a Brazilian buzz button. It's smooth, tasty, and leaves you with a signature tingle. Learn more at ZambuLiquors.com. Zambu, taste the tingle. All right, Central Illinois. We've got a 2007 Consensus All-American, a 2007 First Team All-Big Ten, Ronnie Lott Award finalist, Butkus Award finalist, Lombardi Award finalist, Nagurski Award finalist, National Football Foundation Scholar Athlete, and he played in the Rose Bowl. These, of course, are all the accolades that I could have had if Ron Zook would have recruited me to play football at U of I. But that didn't happen. But we actually have the guy who did earn all these accolades. And I'll add to the resume, he was an NFL linebacker. He's an expert analyst for the Big Ten Network, a licensed real estate agent, a real estate investor, a YouTuber, and a community leader. Ladies and gents of Central Illinois, please welcome number 47, Jay Leman. How are you doing, Jay?
Wow, my hype man, Derek over here. Derek and Garrett just know how to make a guy feel good. I'm doing well, guys. I'm glad to be on the podcast with you.
Awesome.
Great. Well, we appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah, we're pretty pumped to have you. Of course, we're used to watching you on the football field, but we've also been watching you in the real estate arena on all your YouTube videos.
Sure.
So we're excited to learn kind of the path you've gone down, how you've used your athletic career to your advantage. Before we do that, though, Jay, I'm going to kick it to Garrett, and he is going to take you through our speed round where we ask you 6 questions and you try to answer those in 60 seconds to get to know you better.
Great. Let's do it.
All right. Like Derek said, everybody can get a better idea of who Jay Leman is through these 6 incredibly hard questions. The first concert that you ever attended?
Tim McGraw, Faith Hill.
I don't think we've had that one yet. Favorite movie?
Rocky IV.
Yes.
Why 4?
Dude, is there anything better than him beating Drago and training in the snow? Like In the Burning Heart, Hearts on Fire. I mean, There's No Easy Way Out. One of the best soundtracks ever.
Yeah.
That's true.
If that
That's
doesn't
awesome.
get you pumped up, I don't know what will, right?
Right. You don't have a pulse.
Oh. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Butter pecan.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Favorite social media platform?
I'm old school, so I would say Facebook.
Yeah, you
There we go.
kill it on Facebook. We follow you and creep you,
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess you could say. So, and last but not least, why Central Illinois?
It's God's country. That's the short answer. But I think, think about what you need for life. We got some of the best soil, some of the best water, and some of the best people in the country. What else do I need?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good answer. Awesome, Jay. Well, obviously, most people in Central Illinois know you from your linebacking days at U of I.
Sure.
And your trip to the Rose Bowl and all that stuff. Tell us a little bit about, I know you've got a unique story from high school and making it to U of I, and then tell us after U of I, kind of the road you went down and how you ended up in real estate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I grew up in Champaign, Urbana. I went to Champaign Central High. I was 4 out of 5. My dad was a pastor, runs the Vineyard Church in Urbana, and my mom. And it was real clear that I wasn't going to get any money to go to college. So my dad would grow up on a farm in Eureka, Illinois, which is kind of out there in between Bloomington and Peoria. And he was afraid that his kids were not going to be able to learn how to work hard. And so he's like, dude, we got to get you guys paper routes. You guys got to be dog walkers. We're going to start this business called Leman Lawn Service. And we got up to 70 lawns in Champaign, mowing people's lawns. And we had a little cart that would hook up to our bike so we could go and mow lawns. And it was really like, hey, we got to save money for college. And sports were always a big thing, but we weren't gifted athletes. I always tell people, at the practice field at Champaign Central, if you've ever been there, it's like slanted downhill, and we would run our 40s on that to make it look better or faster. You run downhill, right? And so, but that didn't help me. As a freshman, I ran a 5.8, 5.40 in high school. So I was not
Wow.
fast, right? And I was a late bloomer and just kind of like a young colt that was really uncoordinated, right? And but got better every year. Just really believe in anything you do, you can always outwork, out hustle, outthink your competition. Those things take no talent. And was able to after the 8th game of my senior season. There's only 9 games in a high school season. I actually played Urbana at the stadium, Memorial Stadium. It was like a Champaign Urbana kind of face off, and set my career record for tackles with 29 in a game.
Holy
Wow.
cow.
Wow.
And then got offered 2 days later from Illinois. I think because somebody else had backed out of a scholarship, and then there was something available for me. So I was like one of the last guys taken. I had no other offers to play linebacker anywhere. I had one offer to play at Illinois State as a tight end, but went to Illinois, redshirted my first year, and it was difficult because I wasn't that big. I was like 200 pounds, 6 foot. Luckily I grew to like 2 more inches in college. I was 6'2", and I got to 245. And my redshirt freshman year, a guy had to miss practice for a reason. I ended up taking a spot in practice and started that game, and ended up starting 41 straight games.
Wow.
Just by running the football, being lined up, and working hard. And with all my success I had personally, we just didn't have a lot of success as a team. I only won 8 games my first 4 years, but the last year I won 9 games, beat number 1 Ohio State, went to the Rose Bowl, and then had a chance to go to the NFL, and had a couple cups of coffee in the NFL. Played for 5 different teams, 2 of them twice. Minnesota Vikings. You guys ready for this? Minnesota Vikings, Carolina Panthers, Philadelphia Eagles, San Diego Chargers, back to Minnesota, then back to San Diego, and then back to and then finished up at the Oakland Raiders. Now the Las Vegas Raiders, but it was the Oakland Raiders then. And my last year, I had 3 concussions for the Raiders, and getting cut over and over again in my health, and I had a baby on the way. I thought, man, it's probably time to hang it up. So for 17 years of pad football, I decided, hey, it's done. I was living in the Chicago area, lived there for about 5 years, was doing a business in sales, and then came down here to Champaign County in 2018 and lived here for the last 4 or 5 years.
Gotcha.
That was a lot, real fast. So
That was
just wanted to
perfect.
be updated.
That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
That's great. So big questions, kind of steering it from the athletic career to the business career.
Sure.
Once you decided to kind of hang it up athletically, what led you into real estate, and why do you continue to build your personal business on real estate?
That's a great question. First off, I think the majority of people are interested in real estate. Like if you said like, hey, do you want to own some real estate, or do you want to invest in real estate? Most people would say yes. Unfortunately, I didn't come from a family that owned like real estate or did real estate investing. So it's really a wild story. I have an older brother who lives in Iowa City, in Hawkeye country, and he got a townhouse that he bought that backed up to I-80, which goes through Iowa City. And in the heart of the Great Recession, 2011, the housing crisis, he could not sell this townhouse. And so I have 3 brothers. My dad calls up the 3 brothers, and he says, calls all of us and says, hey, your brother needs a house, but he can't buy a house without selling his house. So you guys are all going to buy his townhouse from him, and we're going to keep it as an investment property. So, when your dad says, buy this, he basically said, you're going to buy this, you're going to do this, you help your brother out. And, because he had 3 kids, he needed to move, he had to get into this different school district. So we ended up buying this thing, and we hold it for like 5 years, make no money, basically, just breaks even. We have a renter in there, but we're like, wow, this real estate thing isn't that tough. I mean, shoot, we got this one property, and he started investing some more over there. My brother and I kind of partnered with him. And I said, well, I want to do something in Illinois. I was in the Chicago area at that time, and I was like, man, I was very risk averse. So I'm usually a very risky individual, but when it came to putting like a down payment down, like I was nervous. Like, and this before like real estate was like, I feel like the last 2 or 3 years, it's gotten like really hot to do real estate. But this is when it was like, not everybody does real estate or whatnot. So I went to go find the cheapest properties I could find. I was in Wheaton, Illinois. I'm like, well, it's cheaper in Champaign, but the cheapest properties I could find was actually in Danville, Illinois. So I went and so that's another central Illinois town, right? And so I went down to Danville, looked at some properties, and I bought my first property. I think I bought 4 or 5 houses for about $25,000 each. So, I mean, like $125,000 for 5 houses. Right. And I was like, okay, I'm going to like see what happens. Got it managed, because I'm a horrible manager of things. I've realized that I'm only good at a couple things in my life. Managing properties is not one, and I did pretty good in that. I saw those cash flows. I said, well, I could flip a property, so I got a property out in Muhammad, Illinois. I said, I'm gonna it's fixer upper, and I did everything wrong in that thing. I tried to instead of doing the best thing to do in a flip is you do minimal things, right? Basically, hey, I'm gonna do flooring, paint. The less you do, usually the more you make. I decided to change a screened-in porch to a regular room, but didn't even realize that if you do that, you actually have to bring heat and AC into those things. So I didn't know that. I didn't know about I had to pull permits. I tried to put this new deck on, and the railing for the deck was totally against code. And then my contractor got on drugs. He started doing drugs in there. I paid him to do the job, and he didn't pay any of the subcontractors. So then the subcontractors came back and sued me. It was a disaster. I lost $40,000 in that. Okay.
It's tough. Yeah.
And I realized, wow, I am really bad at managing properties, managing construction projects. I did everything wrong. I mean, it was horrible. And I just wanted to cry. I basically, did cry a couple times. I was like, oh, this is bad. Just please end this misery, right? This is horrible, right? And long story short, I was able to offload that property at a very steep discount and was able to live to fight another day, and started buying more properties and got better at stuff. I started learning the BRRRR method, where I buy a property, I would rehab it, I would then rent it out, and then I would refinance it. And the beauty of that, and a lot of people don't talk about, is that you don't have to have it seller ready. You just have to have it rent ready. You go to sell a property, everything when you flip a property has to be perfect, right? But you just have to get it rent ready. Just flooring, paint, harden the property, put hard countertops on, maybe make sure the roofing structure is fine. And I started doing that. And then I wanted to get into bigger properties. So I started saying, hey, I'm going to start trying to do apartments. And I was able to actually use some creative strategies where I brought, the bank brought 80% of a payment for my first apartment in Champaign. It was $450,000. I wanted to pay $450,000 for it. It was 11 units. It was by Westside Park right there in Champaign. And then the guy wanted 475, and we were kind of at the sticking point. And then I was like, well, how about this? We kind of came to agreement. The bank's going to bring 80% of that 475. I'll pay you 475. I'll bring 10. And then you carry back the additional 10%. Okay. Where you're not going to get the other 10%. We'll pay 0% interest on that 10%. I'll get you your money in 36 months over that another 10%. And so I use the cash flow of the property to kind of do a split. I seller financed some of the down payment, brought a bank loan for that. That got me into it. And then I just started building it from there, and now in Illinois, we've got about 90 properties. I probably flipped or BRRRR'd or sold 40 to 50 properties. And, in Iowa, I own a portion of, we have about 280 units in Iowa. So it's kind of grown quite a bit. And that's kind of, again, I'm giving you all the Reader's Digest version of my journeys, and then some nuggets here and there.
Yeah.
So my question is, so it sounds like when you dove in, you kind of went all in, right? You just dove off the diving board head first, went in. Sounds like you learned some tough lessons right out the gate. So when you started to learn these lessons, did you have a mentor? Because you talked about turning it over to be managed by somebody else. Did somebody else guide you through this, or was it just getting punched in the face right and left that kind of made you seek out to learn the hard way?
Well, I was really bad at it. So number one, I was just bad. And when you're losing money and you're bad, you're like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Right. It's like you were sitting on the bench in football. It's like, is it me? Is the guy just better than me, or am I not a good athlete? Or what is it? And I was like, I know I'm not this dumb. I've seen some of these guys that are like big real estate investors. Dude, they're not that smart. I'm like, this guy is not that, these people are not that smart. In my mind, which made me an inflated opinion of myself. I was smarter than these people. But the fruit of my actions was not, really showing that. And so one, I really had to go back and just, I was always reading books, and I was always taking in that information, podcasts and stuff. But really, and I tell people this all the time, and this is the secret sauce, and it's usually overlooked by people when I tell them. And it's so simple that, people don't believe it. but my faith is a big part of my life. And so there's a chapter in the Bible, Matthew 6. It's basically the Sermon on the Mount. And in that chapter, Jesus says three things. He says, when you pray, when you give, and when you fast, do it in secret, and you'll be rewarded. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. It didn't say if, he says when. So I had always prayed. I felt like I had given pretty habitually in my life, but I had never fasted habitually. I had done some intermittent fasting for health, but anyway, long story short, over the last couple of years, I've started fasting habitually and praying for my real estate business, both my tenants and also to get properties. And I couldn't explain to you why it works. All I know is that I was pretty pathetic at real estate investing before I started doing these practices. And the fasting has been a huge way for me. On Mondays, I fast and I say, okay, I'm going to just take this time to pray, to think about real estate. And it has supercharged my real estate business. So It's something you won't hear in this podcast every day. And a lot of people tell me, listen, I want to be good at real estate. What do I do? And I'll say, dude, give, pray, fast. That's what it's all about. And so that's what really got me out of it. But what also helped me is I started to realize, okay, I made so many mistakes in this one. Okay. All the things wrong. I cannot manage properties. I have to find a third-party manager. I'm horrible at accounting. I have to get an accountant, right? Those two things just drained my energy so much that once, even though I was less profitable because somebody was doing my books and somebody was doing my management, it was so much more enjoyable for me. And I realized I'm really only good at a couple things. I'm good at selling properties, finding deals and raising money, and basically motivating or recruiting other people to do what I do. And so those are the three things that I stick to. And if I get out of that stuff and I get more into like the admin stuff and whatnot, I realize, wow, I'm really going down the wrong path here. I need to hire this out.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you sound a lot like Garrett and myself. We are not athletes to the caliber. We didn't play in the Rose Bowl. We did watch the Rose Bowl though. But
yes, I did.
Being able to transition using that competitive mindset that you have in sports and transitioning it to the real world. Like you said, there's a time and place where every athlete, you got to hang up the cleats and you move on. But being able to find something that you can pour your passion into, and that gives you that sport or game in your mind and something to do that allows you to learn and better yourself and continue to grow. And that's what Garrett and I have done. Really, the reason why this podcast started was we were trying to find ways to grow and grow our circle of people and get to know people. But it sounds like to you, that's kind of what real estate is.
Yeah, I would say it definitely grows it. One of the reasons I ended up getting my real estate license too was I was doing all the work on whether it was a good deal or not. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to get my license because I get into properties myself and I'm doing all the deals myself. Maybe I can make a commission off of it. Then I realized, wow, I'm getting a huge circle of other investors. I'm getting a huge circle of, other realtors. I can be compensated for this with a license, and they're becoming my friends. My network's growing, and the more people the more deals you get. And then I realized, wow, Champaign County especially is a very transient county. We have a lot of people here for 2, 3, 4 years, and they leave because of the university, because of the hospitals. And so real estate agents make money when you move, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw, well, there's a big opportunity in Champaign County, even though there's like 600 agents in Champaign County. It's a pretty saturated place that, hey, I could make some income doing this while doing the real estate investing. It's kind of like, okay, let me make some commission to live off now while I build that long-term wealth through real estate. Because I personally don't take any of the cash flows from my real estate properties. It's all rolled in either to buy more properties or to pay off debt or for fixing up the properties. And I don't know when I'll actually take a distribution, probably sometime, but it's snowballing so much. That's kind of my motto.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So sounds like you primarily focus in the residential side, maybe multifamily units. Does that sound right? Or do you also dabble in commercial?
Sure. Good question. So I've done a lot of different things. technically residential is considered anything 1 to 4 units.
Okay.
I don't, in Champaign County, I do not buy single family houses, but I've done that in Danville and sold probably 40 or 50 of them in Danville because the rent to price ratio is better there. So many people said, don't invest in Danville. It's horrible in Danville. And I've ended up loving Danville. In fact, the last 3 deals I've sold have been to out-of-state investors from Florida, Colorado.
Wow.
People don't realize how many people buy in the Midwest and in Illinois for cash flow. I just had a guy from Hawaii buy an 11-unit in Urbana, Illinois. Said, man, I can't find this cash flow anywhere. And so, I helped him get that property. And so it's people talk about, oh, we need to invest in red states but we have a lot of people from red states investing in Illinois, which is traditionally, a blue state politically. And so there is cash flow and, as people say, acres of diamonds all around you. So I think it's the best way to start in real estate, if you're a young single person, is to house hack. That basically, buy a 1 to 4 unit property with an FHA loan, 3.5% down, live in one side and rent the other 2 or 3 units out. Now, try and do that with a wife and kids, probably not going to happen, or you probably won't sleep with your wife that much if you do that, right? So either way is a bad deal. All right. But so if you're a single guy and you're trying to get into real estate, that's a great way to start. I know the Airbnb model is a greater cash flow model than just a long-term rental, but it is not as passive. And so I didn't want to do that because I've got 3 kids. I've got a family. I coach youth football. I do a lot of different things. And I'm constantly trading my money to buy back time, whether it be management or taking less money on the Airbnb by not doing Airbnb. And so I basically have gotten out of single families other than for Danville, Illinois. And I exclusively do multifamilies, usually 5 units or more. Usually I like to be 10 units more. The bigger, the better. I do have a mobile home park in Iowa, which is a great little asset as well. But mostly what they would call, and that's classified as commercial real estate because it's 5 units or above. So mostly multifamily apartments. I do have one commercial building which I got, it's a doctor's office and a hair salon kind of combined.
Cool. Well, that's great. So I'm going to shift into your marketing hat because you've kind of started doing some YouTube. I'm looking at your YouTube channel now, and you've gotten really good at doing the shorts, kind of like the TikTok style short YouTube videos, like the reels. Tell us a little bit about why you're doing that and what feedback you're getting from those.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was probably, I think, beginning of this year, I just decided I'm going to do 50 videos this year. I'm probably, if you count my shorts, probably up to 40 or so. If you looked at it. So there's 2 basic kinds of things in YouTube. And I did that most importantly, you said that's how people find out about you today. Yeah. Like if I'm moving to town, and I have a thing of the top 5 reasons to move to Champaign County. That video, people can hate on it, people can say whatever comments, but it gets traction. It gets people like this guy's actually talking about the top 5 reasons to move to Champaign County. And when people Google that, because Google's connected to YouTube, or where should I move in Champaign? That comes up. Right.
Yeah.
And so, this guy's doing it. Whether the YouTube video sucks or not, at least he's doing a YouTube video, right? Like how many realtors aren't doing a YouTube video?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, it's a good lead generation source. I think it's a good way for me to get out of my comfort zone, and really it forces me, like you guys know, when you're creating a podcast, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Number 1. Number 2, you learn a lot more doing it yourself, maybe than even your listeners learn. Because you get to hear somebody, you get to do all the back end stuff. And as you know, it's a grind trying to launch something new and organic, right? I mean, everybody knows about Bigger Pockets podcast in real estate, but it's like, dude, that's been going on for 15 years and it's got traction and all this stuff. It's tough to start, get momentum from the standstill, right? And so I've just been committed to that. One thing I found is that the long form videos, are great. They may not get as much engagement as a short, but they are a great kind of online resume for people to see that you're an expert at something, right? And they can sit there. The shorts are a great way to get people's attentions, are highly addictive to watch, and can add value. And basically, for me, it keeps me on the top of the mind of okay, this guy's still at it. He's still doing real estate. As Gary Vee says, dude, sometimes it's not about just creating slick documents. Sometimes those document on my Instagram stories, where I'm at, where I'm going to, what this house looks like. And the amount of DMs that I get, from people like, dude, I want to invest in real estate. And like of the last 5 deals that I've gotten, 5 deals that I've sold rather, that to somebody, they've all been off market deals. And the people have hit me up on social media saying, dude, I see you're doing this. I want to buy something. And so that's what happens, right? Mm-hmm. And what's shocking to me is that 95% of realtors don't own real estate for investments. Yeah. Now, I'm like, think about this. Like, would we ever go to a doctor who is a doctor, but he, maybe he's an orthopedic doctor, but you're like, oh, I'm going to have you work on my brain. Like, no, you're an orthopedic doctor. So it's shocking to me that these people help people buy and sell real estate. They see the wealth created in real estate, but they don't own any real estate. And so there's a huge void of like a realtor who is actually very investor friendly. A lot of realtors hate on investors, like, oh, they just lowball everything. They don't, they'll worry you out. I love investors. A good investor will buy something 4 or 5, 6, 7 times a year. Or, if you're like my dad, you stay in your same house for 45 years. That's like the worst real estate client, right? Because we want people to move.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of the niche I've kind of found myself in.
Gotcha. Well, my thought with the shorts and the reels like that is like what you said, you've got longer videos, but if they watch enough of your shorts or your reels, they're probably going to, if they're interested, going to click on something to watch the longer video. So sure. Genius, man.
It's a definitely good lead gen, and kind of rambled on your question about YouTube there, but
that's great.
It adds value in a very short, specific way. And it costs money to do all that stuff though. Like I'm a horrible editor. And so I don't think people realize that a 30-second video, can take 50 minutes worth of editing, and you're paying somebody, $30 an hour to do it. Well, shoot, that's marketing, right? And so my biggest thing is, I don't think when you're marketing, you know exactly 100% sure that this works. I think it's more an inexact science of let's test it out. What is the market like, and go from there.
No. Right. Well, how many real estate agents did you say were in your area?
I think there's 600 licensed real estate agents in Champaign County. It's
kind of like insurance. It's saturated. So who stands out, right?
Right. I mean, it's like, and the dirty secret is this, and I certainly don't want to speak. I'll just talk for realtors, right? Is that almost every realtor can do the exact same thing.
Yep.
Like, oh, we're going to post you all over on the MLS. We're going to syndicate you with Zillow. We're going to, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. And, we're going to put you on Trulia and realtor.com. Listen, everybody can do that. So what makes you different? Yep. For me, my niche is like, I want to be the guy that, if you want an investment property, I'm the guy you need to talk to. I do residential sales stuff for sure. And I will continue to do that because that's, a lot of business in this area, because there's not a ton of commercial in downstate Illinois in comparison to maybe a bigger metropolitan market. But like you said, with insurance, I don't know if you do insurance, Garrett, or not, but it's like, I know there's some things as captive agents, but it's like, dude, insurance is insurance. Like, I'm probably going to go based on my relationship with the person rather than anything. So relationships with people, networking, and standing out.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So for investors, especially because we're kind of focusing on the investor side of real estate, the market, obviously some large changes coming or here, interest rates going up, property values have been up. I don't know if you see that they're coming down, but how does that affect someone's ability or, I guess, aggressiveness when it comes to investing in real estate?
Hey, that's a great question. There was a weird time here in about the month of March where people have this, they don't actually know that the 30-year mortgage that someone gets for their owner-occupied home is different than the interest rate that gets raised at these Fed meetings, okay? So the 30-year mortgage is based off the bond market, and that got up to like 5.5 in like April, or like 6. And the commercial rate really had not been raised. And the commercial rate has to do with your commercial lending, the lines of credits, the business lending. And what it was saying was that the government waited as long as they could to raise the interest rate on businesses and commercial stuff. And then they started to raise that. Traditionally, over time, the commercial rate will be a full 100 basis points or 1 percentage point above that 30-year mortgage. Okay. Well, what happened is during that time, it flipped. The 30-year mortgage was like a point or 2 points above the commercial rate. The commercial rate was at 3.5. You get money for 3.5. Prime was at 3.5. And it was 5.75 for a 30-year mortgage. Now that started to even back out, right? And now the commercial rate is getting up above about it's getting up be about a point above the 30-year mortgage now. And I don't think we're going to see a correction in the residential real estate. I think we'll see so there's 3 C's. There's crash, there's correction, there's a cooling, right? I think we're going to see a cooling in the residential. I think we're definitely going to see a correction in the multifamily residential space. And here's why, is that when you raise the interest rate as much as you have, and the prices that you're paying right now for an apartment that's maybe $1 million worth, the rents have not raised in accordance as fast. They've raised, but not as fast as, say, the price of the properties have raised. So let's say it's $1 million property, and at 3.5% interest, that thing cash flows if you buy it at $1 million. But at 4.5%, 5%, it gets a little tighter. At 6% on the commercial loan, which is what you have to do for an apartment, 5 units or more, it doesn't cash flow at all. Okay. So in order for the bank to actually say, I'm going to give you a loan for that, the price has to come down, or I've got to bring more of a down payment down, right, to have less of a loan. So instead of putting 20% down, I got to put 30, 40% down, or I've got to amortize that loan over a longer period of time. They're not going to want to do it over 25 years. Usually it's 20 years. Sometimes they'll give you 25. Very rarely they'll do a 30 years. So unless we amortize it longer or bring a bigger down payment, those apartments have to come down in price because they will not be underwritten by the bank as being qualifying for the loan and meeting the ratios that they want. And so we are going to see, I would say, a correction in commercial real estate, and based off the cash flow and apartments, we will see a cooling in residential real estate. Certainly not a crash yet. Is it possible? Yes, but the inventory is still very low when it comes to the residential side for actual houses. That gets really technical about interest rates, about amortization, about down payments, but it's all critical to understanding why it will crash, correct, or cool.
So with those prices coming down, that would be a good time to buy?
Yeah, it'd be a good time to buy. Your interest rate is actually going to be higher. But I like to tell people, so your cash flow might be low. I always like to say this line: date the rate and marry the property.
Yeah, for sure.
Listen, you can dump the rate when the rates go back down. There might be some of these apartments are generational. I mean, they're literally, with the way the tax code works, what happens is let's say that, Derek's great grandpa bought an apartment. Okay. He depreciated that out over 40 years. If he sells that, he's got to pay all the capital gains, all the recapture of the depreciation. But if Derek's great grandpa died, which I don't know if your great grandpa is still alive or not. That's why I'm using your great grandpa, because I didn't want to say if your dad died. Your great grandpa died. His grandpa can actually inherit something called step up basis. And the step up basis basically says that, hey, and let's say that apartment now is, his great grandpa bought it at $100,000 and now it's worth, $200,000. So when he inherits that, he doesn't have to pay any taxes on it. If he sold it right away, he wouldn't have to pay any taxes on it, no recapture. If he sells it for $300,000 10 years later, he only pays on the gain of $100,000, right? And so what happens is these apartments don't sell. They just keep on getting passed on and on and on, and step up basis to the kid, step up basis to the kid. So when you have a chance to get an apartment, I don't care what the interest rate is. If you like the property, go get it. Date the rate, because you can always dump the rate later when it goes back down, and marry the property. And so that's my advice to people, is that, yes, be very greedy, as Warren Buffett says, when people are fearful, and be fearful when people are greedy. People are really fearful. Banks are fearful right now. Interest rates are going to go up. I'll be thinking another 0.75 basis points here at the Fed meeting in 2 weeks. So that would put the prime rate up above 6, which seems really high. Historically, it's not that high, but I do believe that this is going to be an opportunity, especially a time too, for seller financing, which may be better for the seller and it may be better for you. Sometimes I bought properties with 0% interest loans because I gave them the price they wanted on the property. So there's all kinds of creative strategies. Again, if you're just talking to a regular realtor who buys and sells residential real estate, they probably don't even know what you're talking about. When you talk about seller finance, you talk about BRRRR, you talk about house hacks, you talk about all this kind of lingo. That's why you really need to get someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to investing in real estate. Just because somebody has a license doesn't mean they know what they're talking about, right? I got a license to fish. It doesn't mean I can actually catch anything, right? So, I mean,
that was good.
Man.
Well, I appreciate that entire explanation because honestly, that is one. We'll send you this video so you can use this for your YouTube channel because that was one of the best explanations that I've been able to find. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I just think there's so many technical aspects and then that kind of gets lost in the shorts, right? Because we're going for like sound bites, right?
Yeah.
But and so the long form video is good. Just the long form videos take a ton of work. I mean, the setup, the lighting, the editing, and it's honestly just a lot easier just to say it out loud to you guys. But the mechanisms of banking are so very interesting to me because it's so misunderstood by most of the world and most people that don't understand how the banks make money. They don't understand what the Federal Reserve's role plays. A favorite book I tell everybody to read is The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. It's, people ask me, what is your favorite book? And I say, man, if you want to have your socks knocked off, you got to read The Creature from Jekyll Island, written in 1994 about the history of the Federal Reserve. And he makes some predictions that have come true, in 2008 and everything else. But it talks about what the government has done to basically stimulate and also create this boom bust cycle that we're in through the Federal Reserve. And so it's just an enlightening read.
Awesome. Well, Jay, we're actually getting close to our time limit. Before we hop off, I have two questions for you. One, where can our listeners and followers find you if what you've been talking about has connected with them and they're interested in potentially investing through you?
Yeah, so I really try to grow my YouTube as much as I can. So just search J Leman Real Estate on YouTube. That's just the letter J and then Leman. If you could subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. That always helps. I'm up to, it's a grind. I'm up to 200 subscribers, and that's the hardest 200 you'll ever get. And for all the content and time you put into it. But I really don't despise the small beginnings. Dude, if you're going after it and going, that's a great place. And then on Facebook, I'm probably most active, which is linked to my Instagram. I have somebody post on my videos to TikTok. I just haven't gotten into TikTok like the 20-year-olds are into TikTok. So I know I should be, but it's just a lot to catch up on.
It is a lot. So I just subscribed to your LinkedIn, or I'm sorry, your YouTube. So you got one more subscriber there. And
awesome.
Second question, we see you and your brother, like you mentioned, your brother's up in Hawkeye country, and you just invested in a complex there. Sure. Question is your brother going to allow you to paint the building orange and blue?
Oh man, that's a great question. I wish, man, I wanted some orange brick, blue brick, but unfortunately, no. But we do like Iowa City as a great market. And here's why we like it, right? Anytime you can have a higher education, like a university with 40,000 or more students, has a heavy international flair. Illinois has that more than Iowa. It's a huge stabilizer, and then a huge hospital system. Listen, education and healthcare are not going anywhere. In Champaign, we got an abnormal amount of beds, hospitals with OSF, Carl, everything. And so for me, it's all about healthcare and higher education when you're in the Midwest. I do believe there's some great cash flow plays to be found in the old industrial towns. Danville, Decatur, Springfield, even Peoria have great cash flow plays, but the industry is largely shrinking, with Caterpillar and Firestone and GM and some of these great companies that maybe are not as prevalent there, maybe still there, but there's some cash flow that plays there as well. Again, I got way too long on that answer, but I'm passionate about the different demographics of why you invest in certain towns in Champaign and why you in Central Illinois and why you don't.
Yeah, gotcha. Awesome. Jay, you've been a great guest. For all you listeners, make sure you're subscribing to the CIBL podcast on your favorite podcast platform. While you're there, please leave us a quick review. You can also follow us on social media, mainly on LinkedIn and Facebook, and connect with Garrett and I personally there as well. Until next time, Jay, you've officially been civilized. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/CIBL podcast. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It's the civilized thing to do.